Welcome to another edition of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. I'm your host, Femi and Michael. Michael, we're past Memorial Day week, and now we are fully entrenched into the NFL offseason.
Can't wait, Fem. I mean, here we are, the month of June. We got 99 days or 98 days now until the start of the season, until we get our first playoff game. So that's exciting to get through. And, we got the training. We got a lot of mini camps coming up. So we'll get a chance to evaluate. Mini camps are mandatory for all the players. So everybody will come back. And, it's a good way before we go on summer break.
Yeah, no, as always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. And also leave a review, please, because we want to hear from you guys. We love hearing from you guys, all your quotes and questions you might have here. So always leave a review for us. Tweet at us as well, at MLombardiNFL is where you can find Michael, at Femi and is where you can find me, Stephen Bond, with us, as always, producing things behind the scenes on the ones and twos. But Michael, before we get into all the football, I'm not sure if you saw this last night. The golf tournament going on here in Las Vegas. It wasn't really a golf tournament. It was more so a golf match like the title says. But Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers teamed up against Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and it was the Brady Rodgers duo that ended up winning this thing. It was 12 holes played over at the win. Rodgers makes a 10-foot birdie to seal the deal. Did you catch any of this, Michael, last night?
I did not watch any of this. I missed it. I did not turn it on. I regret not doing it. I didn't get a chance to see it. But how was Josh Allen's swing? That's what I would like to know.
Josh Allen didn't have a great outing, one could say. He was actually joking during the broadcast. He was like, wow, Patrick, you're carrying me with this, because Mahomes was playing rather well. He's not the best with the putter, but he made a couple putts there. I think he might have gotten hot, but he can really hit the ball. Both of those guys, Allen and Mahomes, they can smash the ball down the fairway, or maybe not down the fairway. They're spraying it all over the course there, but they're able to find some good length and at least look a little bit respectable with their golf game somewhat.
Yeah, and now they all go back. I think now the Bucs have their OTA days, and so does the Bills and the Chiefs and the Packers. So we'll get to see. I think as Rodgers has been in and out of their camp, so be interesting to see. I think this week is kind of the end of OTAs, and then next week most teams have their mini camps Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then usually most teams will. After the minicamp, we'll ride off into the sunset.
What's interesting, because I was watching it last night, and I was like, wow, Aaron Rodgers, one thing, is really good with the putter. And Trevor Immelman, who was on the broadcast, was plotting Aaron Rodgers, but saying, wow, like, this guy can really putt. He reads the greens really well. He was almost serving as Tom Brady's caddy when Brady was on the green there, just kind of reading the greens for him, telling him where to put the thing, where his line was. Brady, your guy, though, not so good at the golf, which I thought was fascinating that he would even do this. He's done this match multiple times now. I think this is his third time doing it. The fact that he does this when he's not very good, and Charles Barkley brought it up during the podcast of saying how much courage it takes for these guys to go out on national television and play a sport that they clearly don't spend much time on in front of everybody. I mean, that just goes to show you how much they love to compete.
And it's funny, too, because, Tom was drafted by the Expos in baseball. In fact, he even tweeted out when he was a left-handed hitting catcher. And so, I think to me, usually that kind of the eye-hand coordination ties over. I know this when, one of the things we always would do in scouting was to always evaluate the quarterback on what he did outside of playing the position. Like, he's got to be the best athlete. He's got to have the best eye-hand coordination. So usually that means when you're watching a kid in high school, he's the holder on the kickoff, holder on the extra point team, or he's point guard in basketball and he shoots really well, or he plays baseball and has a high average. And Brady obviously did some of those things. So it's kind of surprising how it hasn't translated into the golf arena. But you're right. It takes a lot of guts to go out there and spray the ball and then have to get back. I mean, Barkley would know, right?
Yeah, and he was making fun of those guys all throughout the broadcast. One thing that stood out to me was I was almost thinking, I was like, is Mahomes, psychologically at least, a wolf in sheep's clothing? Because he's all buddy-buddy with Josh Allen, who's probably going to be his main rival over the next decade or so in the AFC. And it's like, oh, hey, Josh, keep it up, Josh, you're doing well. And he has the kind of charming, happy-go-lucky smile and all that stuff. But down underneath there, I feel like Mahomes is an ultra competitor, and it almost is reminiscent to Michael Jordan buddying up with all the rivals that he has in the Eastern Conference and stuff, and just being friends with Stockton Malone, being friends with Patrick Ewing, and all these guys who are on the dream team. But then when it comes time to playing on the court, he would always be a killer. Is Mahomes almost similar in that wolf in sheep's clothing, to where he's looking to almost get inside these guys' head and befriend them off the field?
Are you calling him Ricky Fowler? I mean, you think he's Ricky Fowler here? He wants to greet, huh? I mean, I never thought about that. You know, I was reading the article in SI. It's a great article if anybody wants to learn about the great Pat Riley, where Riley still doesn't want to talk to Jordan, doesn't want to have any, he's divorced himself from anybody who's beaten him in his career. Like that fire that burns inside of him just roars. And so I do think Mahomes is too ultra competitive. I think he's playing nice. You know, I think you're right. A wolf's in sheep's clothing. I think he's playing nice. He's good in the sandbox, but he's got to want to come out and say, look, there's no way. This is between you and I, bro. And we are the new Brady and Peyton that are going to take over this league for the next 10 years. And I'm going to be the Brady.
Yeah, and Aaron Rodgers was talking a little bit of trash to him. Then Mahomes sinks the putt to match them, and he's like, "Of course I'm going to make that." So there was a little bit of glimpse there. You could tell of how competitive he actually is, because he was not taking anything from the elder statesman in Brady and Rodgers, though. But I did think that it was a really good endorsement for Josh Allen for him to be paired with all these guys, because Brady is the best of all time. Aaron Rodgers is the 4-time MVP, Super Bowl champion. Mahomes is a Super Bowl champion, former MVP. Josh Allen has done neither of those things, and here he is thought of as these guys. He's almost been invited to the adults table before he's accomplished those things. And the Bills, high expectations this year and high expectations for Josh Allen. So I was like, okay, this is almost like the national, everyone's like behind this Josh Allen thing of he's that next guy in the NFL.
Well, I mean, the 13 seconds, the fatal 13 seconds, it's going to be forever. Rosemary Woods' gap in the 22-minute Watergate thing and the 13 seconds by Sean McDermott is going to haunt this kid. I mean, look, I said this. I was wrong on his accuracy. But what I was, his athleticism and what they did with this kid at the end of the year after the win game against New England, where they started to run him more and had him involved in the running game. And he's dynamic in that. He's dynamic, and they can't lose sight of that because he's so goddamn big. I mean, he's 6'5". He's hard to get on the ground, and it's impossible. So, look, I think it's a bright future for them because he's got the skill set and they've got a good enough team that he can make this work. And as long as he stays healthy, I would be surprised if he didn't really just take it over. And what's funny too is when you look at it, like he had 122 rushes last year. Jalen Hurts had 139. And he got 736 yards. He averaged 6'3". Now, the difference is he rushed for 6 touchdowns, right? Jalen Hurts rushed for 10 and threw for 16. Josh rushed for 6 and threw for 36.
Yeah, a little bit different there. So Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, all those guys will be going back to the OTAs mini camps coming up here later on next week. But another guy who returned to OTAs this week, Michael, our buddy. Guess who's back again? Kyler Murray is back at OTAs here for the Arizona Cardinals. And I want to ask you this. Is this a sign of negotiating in good faith from Kyler Murray and his agent for him returning now to Cardinals OTAs after missing out on the first week?
I mean, I think it probably is. I think he's trying to play nice. They made the trade for Hollywood Brown, and so he returns to the land of Oz. I mean, can't you see them all circled around at practice, huh? They put, the certificate of the death, right? They read it, and so they all kind of follow the yellow brick road. I mean, why not follow the yellow brick road? That's going to lead you to the money. I mean, the Cardinals have made no ill attempt to say they're not paying them. I mean, they're playing nice too. So this yellow brick road does lead to Oz and a lot of money for the mayor.
Yeah, the mayor has returned back in Glendale, Arizona, or wherever their team facility
is. That Lollipop Land? Should we call that Lollipop Land? Is that where? Can't you see them all on that circle? Well, you know what? When I'm so old, but when they, I used to watch that show in black and white. When they colorized that, it was like a whole new world. I mean, you're young enough to only remember it in color, but I could see the mayor right there leading everybody down the yellow brick road.
Oh, they're back in color in Arizona as Kyler Murray has returned behind center for a Cardinals OTAs. What message do you think this actually sends to his teammates? Because last week he wasn't there, and it was probably contract related. Now, maybe he was doing other things. Maybe he was finishing up a vacation or whatever. But Now that he's actually there and OTAs are underway, he's being a part of this offseason program without having the contract. What kind of message does that send to his teammates?
I think it's, look, I think he's got a bond with his teammates. One of the criticisms I have, and look, I call him the mayor, but he is multi-talented. There's no denying that. He's just short, and he has trouble seeing at times, and that's why I call him the mayor of Munchkinland. But the reality is he's got talent. He's got a powerful gun for an arm. He can make all the throws, and he's really dynamic when he's out when he's out away from the pocket, and he can move around and get into that roadrunner beat mode. But I think what he's got to do is endear himself. I think if I were Cliff Kingsbury, I would be having a conversation with him all the time about, hey, look, you alone aren't going to get us there. We can get there. You're going to have to rely on your teammates. You're going to have to rely on them to really help us. And you got to build a camaraderie with them. And that's going to be critical. And if we don't do that, if we don't work together in that area, then I think it's going to be, and it starts right now. It starts with the OTA days. It starts with endearing yourself. It can't be phony. It's got to be real, but you got to do it. And I think it's a good step for them. Look, I don't know how good Arizona's going to be. I don't know what Kyler's going to be like in the second half of the season, but it's a start, and I think it's important that they do it.
Yeah, and this Cardinals team has really started fast under Cliff Kingsbury and with Kyler Murray. It's been the second half of the year to where they've fallen off, and we saw that last year after they started 7-0. And then ending against the LA Rams. Speaking of those LA Rams, it's another interesting storyline, Michael, that's bubbling in the NFC West, and it's Aaron Donald, the defensive tackle, the all-world defensive tackle, Aaron Donald, for my money, probably the pound-for-pound best player in football, and he wants a new contract. They're coming off the Super Bowl championship, and there's been the rumblings and the whispers of Aaron Donald being willing to walk away and actually retire. Do you think that's even a possibility that Aaron Donald could be done playing football if he doesn't get the desired contract that he is after?
Well, I do. I mean, look, I finished this book 2 weeks ago, and I will say this. I wrote the top 100 players in the National Football League. Some are currently still playing, and Aaron Donald's in that top 100. I'll just say it. I don't tell you where he ranked him, but he's in the top 100, and he deserves to be in the top 100. And because of the way he can take over a game and the way he can put pressure from the inside. And what I love about his game more than anything is his relentlessness, his ability to play down after down hard. His conditioning is, to me, where I think it just sets itself apart. I mean, the guy had 25 quarterback hits last year. We never talk enough about that. That's ultimately where turnovers come from. I can remember being on the team bus in San Francisco. We were playing Houston, one of the great games of all time. We played the Oilers down in the Astrodome. And we were really riding high. We had just lost to Pittsburgh because Allen Kennedy lined up in the backfield on the second field goal. On a first field goal attempt, we would have tied the game 17-17. No overtime. We probably would have ended the year undefeated like the Bears. But Allen Kennedy lined up a little bit off backwards, so we had to kick it again 5 yards back. Wershing missed the kick. Pittsburgh won 17-14. Next week we go to Houston. And it's Glanville's blitz, and it's a hell of a game. I mean, it's going back and forth. But on the team bus going there, we had just re-signed Fred Dean. And Ray Rhodes, the secondary coach, and I were sitting in the bus, and he's like, Lumbo, now we're going to get some turnovers. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, because now we got a guy that can pressure the quarterback without sacking him. Sacks are get all the spotlight, but those quarterback pressures, those hits, those are the ones that create the turnovers. And Donald's a turnover-creating machine. I mean, it's just remarkable. He only had 12.5 sacks. More important than the sacks are the 25 quarterback hits. He's hitting the quarterback, and he's tackles for loss at 19. So, to me, he's so disruptive. We have now gone back, Femi, to the era of football where it was in the 70s. Joe Green, Merlin Olsen in the 60s, where they had Alan Page, where there's some great, great defensive tackles. And this kid's as good as any of them.
Yeah, and it showed in the playoffs, too, when it mattered most. I mean, the NFC Championship game, he has the pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo, forcing him to throw the interception that sealed it for the Rams. And also in the Super Bowl, that was the fourth down pressure on Joe Burrow, which sealed the Super Bowl championship for the LA Rams. So in my opinion, he's worth every single penny that they could possibly pay him. What they'll pay him, we'll find that out later on. I don't think
they're going to pay him like –
yeah, they're going to have to.
Because it's a little bit like, who's going to challenge that somebody's better than him? I mean, relentlessness, conditioning, leadership, all those things the kid has, and you can say, well, he's not real big, he's not real tall. Does it matter?
No.
Does it matter?
Yeah, also ask any offensive lineman who was the worst guy to try to block. It was the short guy who had the natural leverage. That was every offensive lineman will tell you that, and that's what Aaron Donald has there, and he is one of the all-time greats, a multiple-time defensive player of the year. Let's take a quick break, though, here, Michael. On the other side, we'll discuss the NFC South at the top of the division, talking Bucks and the Saints. All right, Michael, the NFC South, it's not the best division in football, but I do think it is interesting. Over at our show sponsor, DraftKings, the Bucks are the favorites, minus 300 to repeat as the champs. The Saints, plus 350. Panthers, 12-1. Falcons, 25-1. But those teams, I don't think we need to get into them as it pertains to winning a division. So let's focus on the Bucks and the Saints, starting with Tampa. This week, they made the signing of Akeem Hicks at defensive tackle. I love it. I love the big guys on the interior, pairing them up with my guy Vita Vea out of Washington. That'll be a fun duo there in the interior. But this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, just based on where they're at in the offseason, Brady, of course, returning as the headlining piece of their offseason. Are you sold on this Bucs team being as good as they were a couple years ago, or do you think that they still have a little bit of work to do to reach that Super Bowl level?
I think they've had a good offseason. I mean, they've lost some key pieces, but they replaced them. Shaq Mason comes in, replaces Alex Kappa. They've lost another guard. They bring Stenny in from Arizona. So I think they've done a really good job of replacing the pieces, trying to add to it. They drafted Rashard White in the third round to replace the kid who left. I think the kid who left, the running back who left to go to Kansas City. So, I mean, I think they've done a nice job of replacing pieces. I love the Hicks signing. Look, I'm a huge Akeem Hicks fan. When I was at the Patriots, we practiced against the Saints down in West Virginia, and we had a hard time blocking him. And then we traded for him, and it was a great trade for us. And that defensive front we had when we were in 16, that was one of the best defensive fronts I think New England's had in a while with Hicks and Alan Branch and Ninkovich and Chandler Jones coming off the edges. I think it was really good. So to me, I think if he can stay healthy, he's hard to block one-on-one, and Vita Vea's hard to block. You better be good at guard if you're going to block these two cats. The other thing that it gives you advantage is the fact that, with this offense, if Godwin's healthy, and I think Godwin's the key for Brady, if he's healthy, they're going to be good. Ronald Jones is the kid I was thinking about, the running back. I mean, so like if he's healthy and Bernard can replace that nickel rack like he did last year with Fournette, I mean, they should be just as good.
This Bucs team, to me, they're the class of the NFC, in my opinion. Now, they're a little older, and teams that tend to be older sometimes get banged up, and I thought that was where they really benefited the year they won the Super Bowl, was that they were the healthiest team by the end of the season, more than their competition. The Chiefs were banged up in that Super Bowl, especially on the offensive line. Last year, the Bucs got the injury bug towards the end of the season. I mean, you mentioned the Godwin injury. The offensive line, Wirfs was out and trying to battle and play in those playoff games, but he clearly was like 40% trying to play on a busted ankle here. With Godwin now, we'll see what his return situation is like. The rehab appears to be going okay, but likely not going to be ready for the start of the season here. It's Mike Evans. It's going to be Russell Gage. Does Brady have enough weapons? I mean, Rob Gronkowski, that's got to be coming down at some point later this offseason, one would think. Is that kind of where you align up with this year as well?
I think Godwin's the key. He's got to come back. I mean, Brady trusts him. Now, will some of these younger players that he's going through OTA days with, Willie? But look, this schedule to start out the season is tough. They start 2 road games right away. They don't play in Tampa until week 3 of the season when they welcome the Packers, and then they have the Chiefs. I mean, they go Dallas, New Orleans, in New Orleans hard. New Orleans beat them twice last year. For all the conversation we have about New Orleans, they beat them twice, convincingly beat them twice. I mean, the game in New Orleans was close. They shut them out the second game down in Tampa, and they weren't even healthy, 9-0. So it's a hard start, but I think it eases off in the second half. They have the bye in week 11, then they come back and they've got Cleveland, New Orleans at home. They've got to go out to San Francisco and Arizona. They still play Cincy, but they end up the year with Carolina and Atlanta. So, I mean, whatever they lose in the beginning of the year for the first 10 weeks, I think they can make it up. But it is a hard schedule. And it's going to require health and durability from their team. And it's going to require Brady to continue to shock us all that he can still play at this level at his age. I mean, at some point, Father Time does show up. It didn't look like it last year, though.
Where are you at with their secondary? Because that seemed to be the weakest link of this team last year. Now, Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis, those guys were banged up all last season. Winfield's back. They lose Whitehead to the Jets, but they bring in Logan Ryan there. Where are you at with this secondary, and can they be better here in 2022?
When you're as dominant as they were against the run, and they were the best team stopping the run in the NFL in terms of teams trying to run the ball against them. They had the least amount of rushing attempts that any team has had in the National Football League. They ranked first in that in that category. They were third in rushing yards allowed. Okay, so that's really good. So what happens is, because teams go in there and say, we can't block Vito, we can't block this Sue, we can't block, we're going to have to throw, we're going to have to make a lot of. So what does that translates to? That translates to they are a team that is always facing passing games. They were 32nd. They were the team attempted the most passes against the Bucs in any team in the league. Kind of goes hand in hand, right? You can't run it, we got to throw it. Mm-hmm. So they had a suit. So they had to deal with all that. And so they gave up a lot of yards. And I think with Bowles, it's going to be critical for him to get pressure. The key to their success, it really is, football's a simple game. If you get the lead in the first half, it's going to help your defense in the second half. And I think ultimately that's what will happen. Brady will manifest itself. The West Coast, I've said this before, the West Coast offense is not smash 7 curl. It's not 20 bingo cross. It is a philosophy that's built on, we are going to throw the ball in the first half to get the lead, and we're going to have a pass rushing unit to keep the lead. And that's what the Bucs have. And because you can't run it on them, you become one-dimensional. And then all of a sudden, they create turnovers. They're fifth in the league in creating turnovers last year on defense. So, it goes a long way, and they keep you out of the end zone. They were really good. They're fifth in the league in total, and they were 10th in red zone defense. So, they match all the criteria that a good defense has if they get that lead.
Yeah, I think that red zone defense is directly correlated with how well they defend the run, because it's hard to score points in the red zone, score touchdowns if you can't run the football, and all you can do is throw it into there where the windows are so small, because the defense only has to defend about 15 yards or so.
Yeah, and really when you look at it, they were fifth in touchdowns rushing allowed. That's where they were one of the best teams in that. You can't run it in on them.
Yeah. So
you're basically saying it's a wasted play running the ball down in the red zone. You say, oh, that's not. It kind of is. It's a waste. You get first and goal with the 5, right? You got 3 plays before you got to kick the field goal. Unless you're Brendan Staley, you'll go for it on 4th down. But that's beside the point. But the reality of it is you got 3 plays. What are those 3 plays? And you're wasting a play if you run it. Like, you're not going to be able to running the football in the NFL is about being able to gain a half-man advantage. That's all, just a half a man. They're in an 8-man front. We got to figure out a way to get 7 and get that half-man blocked, and all of a sudden we can run it. But the Bucs take that away with their ability because of their power inside. Sue and Vita Vea. Now they've got Hicks, who's a little bit like Sue. He's very strong at the point of attack. Hard to do. And so you throw it, and that's where the turnovers create.
It's interesting looking back at last year's Tampa Bay Buccaneers schedule. They lost to the Saints twice, and then they lost to the LA Rams twice. Outside of that, the only team they lost to last year was the Washington then football team, now Commanders. The Saints are the thorn in Tampa's side, and they have been since Tom Brady joined in 2020. They've yet to beat New Orleans in the regular season. Now, they won the most important game, that playoff game, which then vaulted them to the NFC title game, then ultimately to a Super Bowl championship. But this Saints squad, they're very talented, and we've talked about them in the past. I think about this team, despite the loss of Sean Payton, I think they're still going to make the playoffs because they're just too talented to fail. Am I going down the right path here?
I think you said it perfectly. Look, and I think Dennis Allen has done a good job of disguising things for Brady and making it hard on Brady. He really has. He's made it hard on Brady. And, and so because they can't kind of get that early lead, for a team to shut out a really good offense like they did, it's pretty impressive. And so, I like the Saints. I think the Saints on an over number is a good play. Look, I'm not in love with Winston, but I do think with the way they play defense, their offensive line will be improved. I don't know how long Kamara's going to get suspended for, but with Thomas back and, with Olivier, the receiver, to go along with what right now, when you look at their roster, one of their best players last year was the Callaway kid, right? Mm-hmm. And now Callaway's the 4th receiver. You got Landry going to be the 3rd receiver. Callaway's the 4th. Callaway had a really good year last year. And so now their receiving corps is better. The offensive line, I think, with Penning, the rookie they drafted out of Northern Iowa, I think he'll be able to hopefully play 17 games, and they won't have to deal with the Armstead injury going back and forth. And all I've heard about now, we'll be interested to see, is this Lucas Krull kid that they talked about. This tight end that they signed that was a basketball player at Pitt, and he had a good year. He's 6'6", and they feel like he could really come around. So I like the Saints team. If they get some production out of the tight end, if they get a young tight end to come through for them, with their defense and Dennis Allen's scheme, it's hard to play.
The Kamara thing has been awfully quiet this offseason ever since he had that little skirmish, or what you might want to call it, during the Pro Bowl week here in Las Vegas. If he is suspended to start the season, maybe 2-4 games, or however many games the league decides to suspend him, what kind of impact does that make on this Saints offense to have no Alvin Kamara, who's been one of the most do-everything type of running backs that we've seen in the NFL?
9.3 yards a catch. I mean, that to me says it all right there. Whenever you can get a running back to average over 9 yards a catch, that he's a weapon. He's moved from being a running back to being a weapon. And that's what he is. Your boy Zeke, he's at 6'6". They can't make him a weapon. So it's okay, he's getting the ball in the run game. When you got a guy like Kamara that can get to 9'3", Eckler gets to 9'2". Jonathan Williams is at 9'0". You get that going for you, it's hard. And so everything's centered, because why? It's an easier throw. When you look at targets, you must always look at receptions and targets. How many throws does it take to get the ball completed to this guy? And running backs, that margin shrinks because a lot of them are shorter throws. And because they're shorter throws, you can yards after the catch. I think it's a hard guy. He's a hard guy to replace. Dwayne Washington, who's been there, I don't think they can't replace Kamara. Now, Ingram can give them some help in the running game, not in the passing game.
Ingram, he's not really the do-everything type of running back that Alvin Kamara is. Kamara is an elite football player, and if they have to lose him for a couple games or 4 games, it's going to be tough to keep the ship afloat, but if they can, they'll be set up really, really well the rest of the season. Defensively, though, they added a couple safeties. Marcus May from the Jets, Tyrann Mathieu from the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs letting Mathieu go. He was sort of the captain of the back seven of that defense in Kansas City. What do you think he can do here in New Orleans, and can he still play at that elite level?
He replaces Malcolm Jenkins, and Malcolm Jenkins got him lined up. Malcolm Jenkins got him organized. And Malcolm Jenkins allowed the scheme to go from the blackboard to the field, which is critical. And that's what your free safety has to do. Your strong safety or free safety, who's ever making the checks. And Mathieu did it really well in Kansas City. It's one of the reasons they got better on defense in the second half of the Washington game, which was in week 6 of the season. Mm-hmm. I think he's going to be a huge help for him. Look, the pressure's going to be on the corners. Gardner Johnson, Adobe, the kid from Stanford. They drafted a kid, Taylor, in the second round. P.J. Williams is actually still on the team. Bradley Roby's still on the team that they brought back from Houston, who they signed. So, it's going to come down to their pass rush and their scheme. And, the guy that I think is really more important than anybody is Davenport. They gave up a first-round pick to get Davenport. He's got to come through and really do a good job of rushing the passer to go along with their defensive front. I like their defense. I really do. I like Demario Davis as a coverage guy. I thought the Werner kid played well for him last year. So, look, there's a lot to like about their defense.
It's a really deep defensive team here, Saints. And in my opinion, I think that this team, like we've talked about how they're too talented to fail. Like it really resides with Jameis Winston. As long as he doesn't turn the football over, I think this Saints team can be really, really good and make the playoffs. Because it's an NFC that after the top 3 teams or so, nobody's really that good that you can trust. And this team is really talented. And if they protect the football, they can be there with a 9-10 win caliber season, even though Sean Payton is gone out there in New Orleans.
But I would say this, Femi, before we go to break here, I would say this, though. The Saints are a little bit like a baseball team that has a really good lineup, and they've got middle relievers and all that. Do they have a closer? Last year, the kicking situation was really challenging. They missed 5 kicks last year. They missed 7 extra points last year. And when you're a 9-8 team, those 15 points that you missed on field goals and those 7 extra points that's 22 points you gave away somewhere. Now, you're not going to make every kick, right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to make every kick. But, when they brought Aldrich Rojas in, he was 1 for 4, and so, and they missed it, and so now this year, Will Lutz comes back. That, to me, is going to be the key. When you have such a slight margin of error, those kicks become, we saw it with the Bengals run. I mean, McPherson really is the MVP. As great as Burrow was, as great as Chase, guy made every kick.
Yeah, Money Mac. That's what they call him out there in Cincinnati. Let's take a quick break, though, Michael. On the other side, I want to ask you, is less more? We discuss it next. All right, Michael, your latest column for VSiN.com here. Make sure to check that out, folks. Go to VSiN.com. Michael always posts a column weekly. Really, really good stuff. Get some insights on the NFL. But this one features Nick Sirianni, the Eagles head coach, and the operation that's going down there in Philadelphia. Sirianni has told people, and they've pretty much acted on it, of having less OTA practices to try to get players healthy to training camp and to the regular season. Do you agree with this sort of approach from second-year head coach Nick Sirianni?
Well, I think what he's trying to do, and they did it last year at practice. When I went up there to watch the Patriots practice against them, I didn't think they were in great shape. They started 2-5 for the season. They had these red days, which were light days. Yellow days were cautionary days, and green days they went for an hour and a half. They didn't really practice that much. I mean, you could see it in Fletcher Cox. He was never really in great shape all year, and the idea is if we practice less, we'll keep our team healthy. And it resulted in a healthier team this year. But what made me think of this was I was reading, it's a great email, it comes out every Thursday by James Clear, the writer of Atomic Habits. And he said when researching strategies, and this is a strategy, right, Femi?
Yep.
Emphasize patterns over stories. One person succeeding means nothing. 100 people succeeding is a signal. And what I'm thinking is Sirianni thinking that this 1 year is one person, or is it really working? Like, they start 2-5. I mean, they didn't beat any good team. Go through their 9 wins. Really look at their 9 wins. I wrote about it in the column. They played Brady twice. Game wasn't close, right? Game wasn't close. The playoff game, it's 31-0 before they make it 31-15, okay? They play Mahomes. They play Herbert. Right? They play Derek Carr, and they play Dak Prescott. In those 5 games, not counting the playoffs, in those 5 games, they only allowed the ball to hit the ground. No, excuse me, in the 6 games, they only allowed the ball to hit the ground defensively 36 times. That's 6 incompletions per game. So anytime the level of comp was risen, they struggled. They were bad in the red zone. They were bad on third down. Now, all those things can get corrected. I like their offseason. However, that being said, if we don't practice, how are we going to get our young players better? Jordan Davis is a very talented player, but he also is a guy who likes to kind of like me, sit on the couch and do nothing. So if you're going to let him sit on the couch and do nothing, is he going to have a weight problem? Is he going to get a heavy? There's a fine line. I think you got to practice football to be good at football. Football's a contact sport. Right? And I'm not saying you should be in the old 60s and beat the shit out of everybody every day. But I think, to me, are you cheating your young players by cutting down on the OTA days? Now, hey, look, a lot of teams give up 2 OTA days at the end of the year, too much, right? Between minicamp and OTA. I get it. But I think, to me, with the shortness of training camp, this is your time to teach. This is your time to teach.
Yeah, no, and you mentioned that they played all those good quarterbacks last year. I think you didn't even mention Justin Herbert, who went 32 of 38 for 356 yards against that Eagles defense. There are 2 touchdowns in the Chargers 27-24.
Jonathan Gannon got a head coaching interview. Did anybody watch him in these 6 games? Did anybody watch his defense? It was bend, don't break. He was really good at not giving up big plays. But the percentage of completion against them, I mean, Brady, I think one game only had 3 incomplete. Derek Carr was 32 for 35. Yeah. And so, to me, my point of the column is, I like the Eagles offseason. I think they've improved. I think Bradbury's a zone corner, not a man-to-man corner. But I'm worried about, are they going to be really ready for the fight? They look at their schedule after they lost to the Chargers. Who did they play? Who did they beat the whole year? Tell me one good team they beat, Femi. I'll wait.
Yeah, you're going to be waiting a long time because I can't really come up with one.
You can't.
When I'm looking at the schedule, I'm like, it's Denver, New Orleans last year in November. At that point, they weren't very good.
With Trevor Siemian at quarterback, right?
Yeah,
they played Trevor
Siemian.
See, I think they're the perfect example of a team. As fans, what we have to do is we have to separate the schedule. What quarterbacks are we playing and who aren't we playing? And then that tells you what you're doing.
And this is a team that I'm high on heading into 2022. I think that they have a favorable schedule because once again, you can look at the quarterbacks and say there's not a whole lot of good ones on this schedule. And maybe they'll lose to the good ones, but they might still end up there with a 10, 11, 12 win season because they got some favorable looks there.
No, I'm with you. I like the schedule. They play the NFC North. They play the AFC South. I mean, for them not to go over 9.5, it seems like, but to me, and I wrote this in the column, are they going to be the Utah Jazz? Are they going to be a really good, are they a regular season team or are they a true playoff team? Because we didn't even touch on the major issue we have before is Hurts. Can he throw the ball well enough?
And I think the point that you brought up about whether Sirianni is taking this one data point and thinking that this is the signal and maybe not just an aberration of, because sometimes health can be luck. And you might be healthy for a number of different reasons. Maybe it was the limited practice reps to where you kept the bodies fresh, or maybe you just were random and had everybody healthy all in one season. Now, the one team that has figured it out is the LA Rams, but outside of them, everybody else it's fluctuated based on their health from year to year. And the fact that hundreds of other teams continue to go at this thing with taking all the full OTA practices, in my opinion, I would prefer that. I mean, there's a sweet spot in here somewhere of going full Junction Boys, Bear Bryant status, and then also going like, okay, we're just not going to practice. There's a sweet spot, and you hope that Sirianni can find that sweet spot. But the point that you bring up of the limited reps at practice, that's going to hurt some guys because football is a sport where you have to build up that callus. I mean, I talked to Pritch here at VSiN, and he always says that guys aren't practicing enough. That's why you see the soft tissue injuries because they haven't built up that callus in training camp, and that's why we see that early on during the regular season.
I couldn't agree more. And look, if Tom Brady's taking 200 reps in OTA days, don't you think Jalen Hurts should take 300? I mean, seriously, let's put it in perspective in that way. I just think, to me, you're taking the soft. Now, look, analytics are saying less, right? Belichick has the great line. If you tell me the play the guy's going to get hurt on, I'll pull him out. Like, you can't predict it, right? I mean, how many times have we watched the game? I mean, we saw Danny Green go down with an ACL and MCL, Like, did it think that was going to be, like, you don't know. Sometimes these non-contact injuries just occur. I mean, the Rams have been able to do it because veteran quarterback, veteran coach, everybody kind of knows their scheme, and so they're able to do it, and they play. But I'm just not sure it's for – I'm not saying you got to go back in 1960s and drink water out of a bucket. I'm not trying to be an old school. I'm way different than that, but I do think player development needs to happen with cleats on and on the field, and you've got to get better because if you're not practicing football, how are you going to get better at football?
That's the age-old question. I don't think you can get better at football. You can stay healthy, and I think being healthy is important because you want to have your guys on the field. Like if you have a bunch of guys who are counting against the salary cap on IR or not playing, then what good is that for you as well? But getting your team healthy to the season is important, but you also need to get those reps because, like you mentioned, you could start the year off 2-5 to where you're behind the 8 ball, and if not for a favorable schedule, we're probably not talking about you in this light that we are here in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, would you rather be a healthy 6-11 or an unhealthy 11-6? I mean, you answer that, right?
Yeah, I'll take the 11-6. I'll take that. Fly, Eagles, fly. We'll see if they can stay healthy here in 2022, and we'll see if that they can actually be as good as many think that they are with their win total set at 9.5. I like the over. Michael likes the over. We'll see what happens once the ball gets kicked off in September. Let's take another quick break here, Michael. On the other side, we'll clean up any news and notes, and also a little Sopranos in 60 coming up. Oh, all right, Michael. OTAs is the season of optimism, as we've come to know here in the National Football League. And Chargers wide receiver Keenan Allen told the media this week that he believes that they have an all-pro at every position on the team. Now, the Chargers roster is very talented, but is it the most talented in the NFL?
Look, I mean, they do have a lot of good players, there's no denying. I mean, defensively, they have a Pro Bowler on almost every level, right? So, but can they play well? I mean, look, last year, they were as bad as you can be defensively. I mean, there's just no – I mean, teams could run the football effectively on them. You know, they never could get control of the game. They were never able to, usually they were ranked 4th in the league in the percentage of the time that teams got the ball and scored. That's not good, fam. That's not good. Forget the yards allowed rushing. They finished 29th in points allowed. That's the number one stat. And they were the worst team on third down. This is with Nick Bosa. I mean Joey Bosa. I mean, they were the worst team on third down in football, and yet they have all these Pro Bowlers on every level. I think that's the concern. And if you're Brendan Staley and you're sitting there saying, okay, we got, we're really good. We got Khalil Mack this year. We got, 2 corners and Samuel, and we've got J.C. Jackson, and now they go with Derwin James. And then we got, Joey Bosa and all these guys. Yeah, it looks good on paper, but is it going to translate? I don't know. I love the quarterback. There's no denying. I love the quarterback. I think they need a power back, Femi. I really do. I love Eckler at 9-2 a carry, 9-2 a reception. He's a weapon. To me, Spiller, the 4th-round pick, or I don't know if it's Roundtree or Joshua, but one of those guys have got to come through. And I think they've done a better job of fixing their offensive line, especially, I thought Slater was a great pick for them. They got to get that right tackle situation handled because, Balaga didn't stay healthy for them, which hurt them last year. So they've got to fix it. I mean, Zion Johnson, the kid they drafted for right guard, he can help. I mean, to me, with that quarterback, they can't be out of a game. But until they can control the game defensively, it's hard.
Yeah, talent to me, it's one of those things that it can get you in the door, but it's not going to really guarantee you anything once you actually get in. And we saw that with the Chargers last year. They had a talented roster as well, but they came down to Week 18 where they lost to the Raiders on the road in overtime in that game that prevented them from going to the playoffs. I think that if they were to not make the playoffs this year, it would be a colossal failure based on the talent that's on this roster. I think they're as good as any team in their division right now in the AFC West. They can easily win that, not easily, but they can win. I can see them winning that division as well as I can see the Chiefs and the Broncos winning that division as well. The Raiders are no pushover themselves either here in Las Vegas, but this Chargers team, I mean, they haven't proven it yet. So I think that's why I'm a little cautious in buying fully in, but a lot of the pieces make sense. The head coach, whatever you think of the 4th down decisions, I think that he has a positive impact on the team just based on a morale situation. They seem to like him. So maybe if some of those 4th down decisions go their way, this could be a 12, 13 win caliber team out there in a very difficult AFC because they have the quarterback for sure in Justin Herbert. And if they protect him, it's going to be hard to keep that team out of the end zone.
It is, but they got to get better on 3rd down, right? They got the worst for a 3rd down team in football. They're a 26th red zone team. I mean, they had too many high-scoring games. I mean, it really put all the pressure on Herbert, and they couldn't control the game. And, they weren't able to be, and I think it comes back to having a real physical back to complement Eckler. If they lose Eckler, that really hurts their offense. Mm-hmm. Herbert gives them every opportunity to win a game. I mean, that Cincinnati game that they won, 41-22, that's a close game. Cincinnati is coming back in that game. And I think I forget, it was Mixon or one of the backs for Cincinnati fumbled and kind of opened that game up. It was a little deceiving, and but look, I think to me it's going to come down to, are they improved on defense? Can they play good defense? Can J.C. Jackson hold up? Is his knee going to be good enough? Is Samuel going to be able to hold up? They're going to have to, they'll play some man-to-man. They should on paper, but you and I both know paper and winning are 2 different things.
Yeah, that doesn't mean a whole lot there. It might look good, but it also has to come to fruition on the field.
Femi, this team lost 3 of the last 4 games. They lose to Houston, and Houston they gave up 41 points to Houston.
That was rough.
I mean, Houston put 437 yards on them.
I mean, that's the game that has everybody optimistic about Davis Mills. It goes to show you what the Chargers defense was like last year.
No doubt. I'm not down on them. I don't, to me, when you have Herbert, you're going to be in every game. Yeah. And I think they do they're going to have to be able to control the game a little bit. I think that's going to be the key. They've got to do a better job of being able to get a power back in there and utilize the skill to slow the game down a little bit.
Before we get out of here, Michael, a little Sopranos in 60. Watched a few more episodes last night there. Because things have slowed down on the sports calendar. Watched the match, but after that, I was like, let me turn on a little Sopranos and get caught up here. So next time we do this, we'll probably be done with series 1, I should say, the first season. So I watched episodes 6, 7, and 8. Episode 6, I thought was the main point from that episode was just Tony telling his therapist that he loved her, which, I mean, think about how professional that is if you're in Jennifer's situation. And Tony, just as an aside, I get that he's the main character, but he's not super likable as a character, at least right now. Maybe later on down the series, but right now I'm like, I don't think I like this guy. Just from the way he treats his wife and what he's doing outside in the therapist's office and all that. It's not the most redeeming type of personality.
Well, he treats the ducks awful nice. I mean, he loves the ducks, so that's a good thing. He loves animals, so you'll learn that as we go through this. I mean, that's the whole complex. That's the whole complexity of the show, is the fact that he is a killer. He is a guy that is not likable, yet everybody likes him. There's that dual side to him, where he is kind of funny, and there's moments. And this season, as it goes on, you'll like him less, and eventually he turns around. But he's a guy that is very complex, and you can see it in the complexions. Look, I've always said this, and you're going to find this out. The therapy sessions take the show in a direction. Mm-hmm. So for a writer, it's perfect, because when you want to alter the direction, you just have a therapy session. Yeah. And then she basically, as you'll see this as the years go on, she becomes the Don. She becomes his consigliere. And that really makes the show powerful.
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant from a producing standpoint, and the writing and the way that they have the therapist kind of interwoven throughout the storylines. Episode 7 was AJ's coming out party. I mean, that was just him and his friends showing up to the gym class drunk off the communion wine or whatever they were sipping on and all that stuff. And then they thought that he might have had ADD. It sounds like he doesn't have ADD. But AJ...
He's a fucking mess. I can tell you this. He is the most unlikable guy you could ever go through. I mean, he gets more and more unlikable as the series goes on, to the point where I'll fast forward any scene he's in. Like, he's such an ass.
He is one of a kind, that kid there. But I mean, it's gotten to the point where he's starting to sense that his dad is in the mafia, could be a mob, because the FBI is showing up at the house. They're hiding cash and guns. I mean, Tony hides the cash and guns at the retirement home where his mom is. His mom also another character who I do not like as well. Just another unlikable character. She's
not a mom, trust me. And part of that's the root of that's how he got the show started, because he read about this Philadelphia Don whose mom was really running the mafia. And so that's kind of how he based the whole show. But no, she's not likable. None of them are. They are likable and funny to a degree, but when you dig down, I mean, the avenues that they cross and the lines that they cross are very tough to take. But it's so good to watch.
Still put the cherry on top. Then there's Christopher worrying about why his name is not in the paper when they're talking about all the mobsters. And all
that
this stuff.
Scene there when he goes out to the thing, that's like most coaches who are getting credit for the contributions to winning. Like, where's me? How come I didn't get it?
Like, he reminded me back in the day when I'd have like a track meet in high school. And I'm like, oh, I won the meet. Let me go out and run and get a paper so I can post this on my wall. Yeah. I'm like, what is this guy doing?
It's like local TV here in Ocean City. Like, they can't wait to get on local TV. Like, oh, great, that's awesome. Yeah, there you go. I'm on the Fox News program.
Oh my gosh, no, it's really entertaining. And despite what I've said about all these people's likability and where they've measure up on the Q rating meter, it is really entertaining stuff. So
do you watch Succession? I've
watched 2 episodes of Succession. Now I put that on hold because I'm gonna get through Sopranos first, and then I'm gonna get back to Succession.
If you think the Sopranos character unlikable, let me say this to you. The Succession's characters are despicable. I mean, there's no one there you like. I mean, they're the most, oh, God, they're horrible.
2 episodes in, I was watching it with my girlfriend, and she's like, I don't know if I want to watch this show because I hate everybody.
You have to watch it. It's good. But you just know you have to. It's really good, but the characters they're just not likable.
No, I will definitely get through that by the end of the summer here. Now that we're in the summer months, we're going to pick up more of the TV viewing experience with the sports calendar slowing down.
And what do we have, Stephen, just so we know, June 30th, our podcast on June 30th, that's 11 weeks out before the start of the season. We will go over the red chips and blue chips by each position, ending with the quarterbacks naturally.
Yep. No, that's out. I was just about to mention that, and you took it right out of my mouth there. So Blue Chips, Red Chips series, like Michael said, June 30th, it gets underway. Cannot wait for that, and that will certainly spark some great discussion here. But let's get out of here. Thank you to DraftKings. Thank you to VSiN. Thank you to you, Michael, our producer, Stephen Bond, as always, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.